In this lesson, we're going to talk about factories because they can help improve our tests and make our tests more robust to changes in the long run as we change and evolve our application. In our tests, we have repeatedly created new tags. We've gone ahead and said tag objects create, and we pass in like a dictionary with name, or down here we're simply passing in name equals whatever it is that needs to be. If we were to go ahead and change our models, if let's say that we have to add a new field to tag, all of this code would be obsolete if that field is not automatically generated. We would now have to go through each and every single one of our tests and we'd have to add some sort of field. And that new field or any of the data that we're passing into that new field doesn't necessarily matter for our test. We don't care what the new field is if we're asserting the alphabetization of the name of the tag, right? It's sort of inconsequential. So what we're going to do is we're going to change all of this code now to use a model factory. So it will automatically generate a tag for us with only the values that matter for our test. So we're going to jump into Jupyter Notebook. So in the terminal, I've used Docker Compose up, and Docker Compose up will go ahead and create the Django container as well as the Jupyter Notebook container, and we'll print out a link. All I did was copy and paste this link into my browser, which led me here. And I then clicked on the Data Factory's IPython notebook, or Jupyter Notebook now. I keep thinking of it as IPython, but the newly retitled. So here we are in this, and what I did is I ran kernel, restart, and clear output. I'm going to start by simply importing things. Now, because we're running Django Shell Plus, I don't actually need to do this, but it makes it nice and very clear as to where things are coming from. And I'm then going to go ahead and just create a tag the way I normally would. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a tag using the tag factory. Now this tag factory is code that was programmed by me for the last class that we did about Django. And so all of these factories are already within our project at the very beginning of this class. So you can go and take a look at tag factory and startup factory. We'll see more about the factory right now, but that's why we haven't built it. This has been in the code base the entire time and you never knew. So once we have this tag over here, and I've gone ahead and created this tag factory, I'm simply trying to demonstrate that this is exactly the same tag, right? We've gone ahead and there's sort of no difference. This creates a tag just as much as a tag factory creates a tag. And it creates it with fields that I've automatically generated. So for the benefit of this system, the tag name is name-0 and name and the slug, because it's automatically generated, is also name-0. For the record, if I come up and I rerun this factory, you can see that it's simply incrementing this tag, but that's not the point of what we're doing. The tag factory allows us to specify fields that we may want. So let's say that I don't want this to be name-1 or name-2 or name-whatever. I would like the name to be something specific. And so I go ahead and I give it a string, whatever I want, in this case specific, and that will then go ahead and create a tag with the name. And again, we're using the auto slug field, so it simply sees it and creates a slug as needed. The tag factory has some interesting behaviors because of the auto slug, however, just as a bit of a warning. So if you try and override slug, it won't matter because the auto slug field will take over for the factory. Right? So the factory only gets you so much. The model behavior that you give the model, let's say if you're overriding any of the fields or you override save, all of that behavior will stay, right? This is simply a factory in the design pattern sense for our model. So again, let's just quickly delete that. We have a startup factory as well. This acts in a very, very similar fashion. We can take a look at the fields here. This is sort of interesting. I thought this is a particular internal of Django, but we're going to ignore it. ID1, and you can see the various things, again, that are automatically generated, and we'll see that in just a second as to how that's working. If we look at all of this, you can see that we can create several tags automatically. So startup factory, right? I just called this, and it automatically went and generated tags for us. These were not any of the, you'll notice these are not any of the tags that we had previously created. It's gone ahead and done that for us. That said, I can go ahead and I can specify not only fields, but also many-to-many relationship fields so that I'm then very, very certain that the tags that I'm creating are the ones that I would like to relate. Now, in this case, I'm just generating them via tag factory, but if I needed to be doing something else in a test with a specific tag and I need to make sure that it is attached to this startup, well, that's fairly easy with this factory. And you'll notice, I get all the fields here, but if my test doesn't care about any of those fields and this is all about the relationships, well, that becomes fairly clear with this line of code. So the factory is going to help us write terser, cleaner test code. Now, to finish off, I'm just going to find all of the tags that I've created here and delete them. I'm going to go ahead and then delete that new tag, and I'm going to delete that startup. But that gets us sort of off and running, and it hopefully is a quick demonstration of the power that the factory gives you so that you can begin to sort of play with it. Now, of course, seeing how you use them in such a quick manner is not quite as useful if you don't see how to actually code this. So let's come back to our terminal. Let's quit out of here. And I believe we want to do a git next. And we're going to go ahead and now in test apps, in tests, I'm going to open up factories. So this is a fairly straightforward tag factory. And you can see that from factory, I'm pulling in Django model factory. So what I've done is I've installed a tool called Factory Boy, or Factory Underclass Boy. And it allows us to create factories for Django models very quickly simply by inheriting this. And then much as we do with so many things in Django, we just go ahead and say, hey, the model that I want you to sort of inherit from is this one. But we can specify that if no other field is specified, right, just put this name on here, go ahead and sequence it so that we aren't running into any name collisions because we expect that the name is going to be unique. For more information about the various factory classes, we can actually look in, as I mentioned, our other apps. So let's move into Organizer. Let's go into Tests and into the factories here. And you can see the tag factory is a little bit more complicated. This is actually unnecessary. This is here so that this tag factory will work at the very beginning of the last class before it's an auto slug field. And I simply haven't removed it from this class, but you don't actually need that slug field. And in the startup factory, you can see the behavior that we've just seen, where we're going to go ahead and we're going to sequence the various unique fields, but then we're generating the various fields here with a tool called Faker. So Faker is a tool that allows for data generation of specific types. So it comes with strings that it refers to as catchphrases so that it looks like a type of description for a business. You can see that Faker allows for dates to be created. And we say that it can be a date from this decade and then allow it to be a date from before here. So Faker's a fairly neat tool that is very useful for data generation, especially in tests, because it helps create data that looks right so that as you're going through your tests and interacting with your tests, it looks like you're using actual behavior. Now, you'll remember that when we used the startup factory, it automatically generated tags, and that's what's going on here. It says after we've generated these initial fields, go through and create the tags. The signature for this is a little strange, right? You think it's a method, but you can see I'm not having self as the first parameter. I'm having startup. Post-generation actually changes how this method is called, and we'll call it with the actual object that has been generated beforehand. So we are taking this startup and we're going to go ahead and use Tag Factory to create a list and then add the tags to this startup as we would if we were given an actual startup object, because we are given an actual startup object. We could keep going at this point, but honestly, I think this paints the picture. All of the factory code here is available on GitHub, so you're welcome to go through it. I'd recommend taking a look at the documentation for both Test Factory, or Factory Boy, excuse me, as well as Faker. There's a lot there. It's very powerful. You can do a lot more than what is going on in this repository. But before we go, I just want to show you how this changes our test code. So I'm going to exit out of this factory, and then I'm going to head over into the test models. And you can see that I'm simply calling Test Factory, as sort of already demonstrated, with the Quargs. So in the event that I add a new field or change the tag in any sort of way, the tag model, right, if add new fields, whatever it is, it won't matter, because if we change the tag factory and have it automatically generate that new field, let's say with Faker, all of these tests will continue to pass. I won't have to change any of the tests once I've actually changed the factory. Similarly, down here in list order, everything over here has been changed so that we are passing in just the names, and we will never have to change that as long as we update the factory in the event the tag model actually updates as well. So I highly recommend using factories for your models. It will help you write tests that will last longer even as your project evolves.